Good Sunday morning, everybody. Welcome on in. It's Tobin's Fight Show here on 790 The Ticket. Lots to dive into this week in the world of mixed martial arts and boxing. We will start off with last night's big event, which, of course, was Yordenis Ugás defeating Manny Pacquiao by unanimous decision, retaining his WBA championship, his piece of the welterweight crown. And very, very interesting, awkward fight. And a fun, awkward fight for both guys. I just thought that it was a really, really fun clash of styles. I think you saw from Ugás just a guy who maybe a lot of people were wondering, was the moment going to be too big for him? Was this going to be a case of the lights being too bright, the stage being too bright? And it just wasn't the case at all. The guy was so calm, cool, and collected the entire time this round was going on, really from the get-go, because I thought that even in that first round, you saw Manny Pacquiao was trying to do a lot of that dictating, the action, dictating, throwing a lot of punches, getting the crowd all riled up, maybe getting himself a quick knockdown, and Ugás will pop up. And a couple things were very noticeable off the bat. And there were one that Ugás was just so physically strong. I mean, there was a point where he was shoving Manny Pacquiao, just wasn't going to be bullied by any physicality from Manny and wasn't going to be bothered by anything physically from Manny. And the other thing was just that even in those bursts, those loud, raucous moments that you have, because, and they mentioned this a couple of times on the broadcast, which I want to mention something with them coming up later on in the program today, because Fox has got to do something with that. But there was a point where it was saying, like, when you fight Manny Pacquiao, you are in a lot of times fighting a home crowd advantage. Like, you are fighting a guy. Like, I've been to a lot of sporting events in my life. I've been blessed in this profession to get to do a lot of cool things. Getting to go see him fight was a bucket list thing of mine, because he's always been one of my favorite fighters. And the energy in the building when he knocked down Keith Thurman in that first round, it's unlike anything I've heard in sports. For everybody to just go see one guy and for them to be that happy in that moment, it was an undescribable energy. It was fantastic. And so to see that Ugás wasn't going to be bothered by that, I mean, it was noticeable from round one. I even felt like, even with the tone of the broadcast and the tone of that, like, they were even giving the first round for Pacquiao, and I did not. I gave Ugás the 10-9 in round one, just because I thought that, I thought Manny had a nice flurry, but I thought that he had weathered the storm, and that really was a big theme throughout the fight. Round two really was Manny was kind of, I think, trying to figure some things out, and we saw that when he probably had his best moments of the fight when 3 and 4 happened. His most aggressive, his most balls to the wall, his most gas. Putting the pedal to the metal to really go down and try and fight his fight. Probably like 3 through 5. Like, that was the best we saw Manny Pacquiao in the entire fight. And I could even say this as a guy who's I'm a homer when it comes to scoring his fights. I'm a guy who I tend to give him the nod on a lot of things, just because I know a couple of things going into Manny Pacquiao's fights. I've seen every one of his fights, and I know that there's a couple of things that I get worried about, especially a guy, I would say, second half of the career, Manny Pacquiao. I get worried about fights that he gets out to big leads for, because I feel like he's going to coast. A guy who used to go butcher eyes, break orbital bones, knock people out, knock people down. He just hasn't been that same guy for a very, very long time. But the other thing is, you like to know when he's in these moments, when is he going to kind of go full throttle? When is he going to have those bursts to really amp up the pressure on his opponent? And then how does that opponent react? How does that opponent deal with that? And Ugás just never was really bothered by it, even in those times where you had those awkward exchanges and Manny Pacquiao's throwing those 4-punch to 6-punch flurries, and he's landing even some really good shots. Ugás wasn't bothered by it. Even sometimes he would come back, pop, hit him with a 1-2, and it really was just always felt like when Manny is the guy who always felt like, even in those classic battles, like he would take some counter shots and he was always going to eat shots because he was an offensive fighter. Defense was never his prerogative. He always kind of relied on his footwork and speed and angles. That wasn't the case with him today. It was just, he was basically right in front of Ugás basically the entire time. And sometimes he would charge in and he would be able to get out, but it was never side to side. There was no any special angles or things like that. He tried it a couple times. You could see he was trying to really hit that lead right hook and just wasn't able to land on it. And then credit of that goes to Ugás. Maybe some of it goes to an aging Pacquiao. I know that he mentioned the tightness in his legs, but it was interesting. I was having a conversation with my uncle, Liam, he's actually the guy who got me into Manny Pacquiao. At a really, really young age, we were watching like Boxing After Dark, and he was just saying like, this one worries me tonight, because we almost talk about Manny Pacquiao like it's one of our teams. And I was like, nah, come on, bro. Like, he was prepping for Spence. I know it's a complete flip of the styles, but like, Ugás ain't the level of Spence. Like, I just felt like I really was buying into Manny was going to be able to carry this over. He looked fantastic in training. But he was spot on. Just the idea that Ugás has just that and so many do from Cuba, just that pristine style. They're so skilled. They're so good. And he's no different. Like, he's so good at distance and range and making you miss. And it's so much. There's no real flash to it. Like, you have Manny Pacquiao, who is the ultimate flash fighter. He is, unorthodox. He does things wrong from time to time, but it's just been so fantastic. It's been his own, and they talked about this. There's not going to be another one of him. There really is never going to be another one of him. And with Ugás, there's a lot of great guys from Cuba who fight with that just pristine style. They have so much damn success. Ortiz and Erislandy Lara and him, and just the Guillermo Rigandao, and like, just these guys just have. They're so good for so long, and it's like you see 35 years old. It's like he's got so much more on the odometer when you have that style. It almost doesn't even feel like it uses a lot of energy. And he just was just frustrating Manny like hell with the jab. That was very clear. The fight was basically at that distance for the grand majority, and Manny was. You could just tell, thinking of times like, okay, is this the time where I'm going to go in? And there were times where like. He still had some moments like that, it was funny. They had, and I'll kind of divert off into the broadcast thing here a little bit, because Joe Goosen and Sean Porter were getting into it. But Sean was right. Like, Sean was right that Ugás was, was looking really, really good. And that Manny didn't quite look the same. And this was really bothering Joe Goosen by a grand level. And then they brought up a tweet from Damian Lillard. And I don't think Joe Goosen knew who Damian Lillard was. Apparently he thinks that like he's Sean Porter's relative, and so I don't know. Fox has just got to do something with that broadcast, man. It's so bad. And they have so many big fights. And they just feel like they got to do better, for having for PBC having all of this money involved. And I don't know if it's they don't care, because like, it's almost like, it behooves the promoters not to have people as keen in, like, they're basically just using their fighters as broadcasters. Then they have Brian Kenny, who I'm not a fan of calling blow-by-blow. I respect his boxing knowledge, and I think he's good as a boxing personality. I just think he stinks calling fight nights. I think he's terrible at it. I would almost like him hosting the desk rather than being on the call for blow-by-blow. And meanwhile, we have Jim Lampley, who maybe will call fights for Triller one day and is just, was out there and available for somebody to have, and nobody wanted him. But, they were just, the thing is, like, you get into these boxing broadcasts, they go so much down the narrative path, like they're missing the fight as it goes, and they just, oh, okay, we choose this, we go, and they just miss everything that's happening. So I just find that wildly frustrating. But Sean Porter was right on. Like, the fight was going Ugás's way. I think Manny, after that fifth round, he was really starting to frustrate him. He was really hitting with some big shots. They kept going to the shots of Jinky Pacquiao, and couldn't have loved what she was seeing from her husband. He was taking a lot of big shots, and honestly, you know, everyone's always going to go back to the Juan Manuel Marquez knockout because it's an iconic shot, it's an iconic rivalry, and but almost fights like this sometimes can be more dangerous because you just take so many of those, and it felt like he was just taking so many of those thudding right hands. Which, yeah, they weren't putting him out and they weren't putting him down, but it was just enough. Like he was moving across the ring, and like they were just not. It wasn't enough to put him away, but it was still in the level of he was definitely rocked by that, and he's coming back from more. So, Ugás, I think he gets a lot of credit for tonight. I think that definitely for me. I mean, like I definitely underestimated him going into this. It's got to be a cool moment for him too. I think for us down here in South Florida, him going in with the Cuban trunks. He lives down here. The Patria Vida on his trunks, on his robe, and everything that's going on with Cuba right now. I know there's so much unrest in the world going on right now, and that almost feels like a fight that's because the world moves so much. Almost people have forgotten, which sucks and is sad. But like, you have all these people in Cuba that are fighting for their freedom and are going against government and are trying to, get their home back and try and do something meaningful. And you have a lot of people over here who just want to make sure their families are okay and are trying to do their part to get the message out there because they're not allowed to in that country. And so I think that was probably beautiful to a lot of people down here. And I'm sure Ugás, if he didn't have a lot of mainstream fans down here, probably earned a lot with that. And so, a huge shout out to him and for him to get that win had to just mean a whole hell of a lot. And you could see how emotional he was and what he was saying in the aftermath. I don't know if it quite came across right in translation, but they didn't have the best interviewers in the world either who were on the broadcast. But another story for another day. But a huge congrats to Ugás, and for him, he's in this interesting spot now because he does solidify that WBA piece of the title. It feels like now it does have a little bit more significance where he was kind of the other guy. It was Terrence Crawford and it was Errol Spence, and now Ugás has this win that both of those guys wanted. I mean, like, they both wanted to fight Manny Pacquiao. They both have been in negotiations to fight Manny Pacquiao. Hell, Errol Spence had a date to fight Manny Pacquiao, and their reactions were kind of interesting on social media because they were both cheering him on. They put congratulations Yordenis Ugás from Terrence Crawford. Ugás, congratulations Yordenis Ugás. And then he puts, and then Terrence Crawford puts an only if and a sad face, which I kind of think is the more, that's an appropriate reaction. I don't really get what Errol Spence's reaction was. He put like a side face sly emoji. I'm probably reading into it too much. I don't know. I guess is he happy that Manny Pacquiao lost? I don't really understand that. He did go good bleep Yordenis Ugás, so gave him the nod. And, for Errol, yeah, I mean, like, look, happy face emoji or sly face emoji, whatever. That's until, unless him and Terrence Crawford get their bleep together. I mean, that's the biggest payday that probably just walked out the door because I don't know what Manny's future holds. I don't know what's going to be left for him. It's tough to read. It's tough to read the interview post fight about what he was feeling. He says, I don't know. I want some time, but he is going to run for president. And there were, when he took a little moment of reflection, it's saying that I hope that I gave you a lot of fun. It felt a little, like a retirement. And I think you think about the last two times that he was in there now and how opposite they were, because you have this fight against Keith Thurman, who definitely wasn't at the peak of his powers. Definitely. And Keith Thurman, I remember him saying this when we interviewed him. He goes, if I was the guy I was 2 years ago, there's no shot Manny Pacquiao would fight me. And that's probably true. Manny kind of felt like he was fighting a bit of a damaged goods Keith Thurman and had the huge knockdown, had that iconic moment that they could put in the highlight reels, that he still got some of that magic left in him. And tonight, it just felt like he just didn't. There was no bag of tricks for him to reach down. As I mentioned, earlier in the show, how I always wonder when he's front running, what's his reaction going to be? Quite in the opposite of this, I was, other than the Floyd fight, I was trying to like really reach about like, well, what fights has he been in lately where he really has been leading? I guess you could go Joe Horn. I thought that he clearly beat Joe Horn. I mean, but that being that being one of those fights where he had that in the bag and then he really relented in the back end of that fight and it cost him. But he was out in front in that fight. And Manny Pacquiao, the only boxer who has his own boxing, who has his own Wikipedia and then has a Wikipedia for his own boxing career. Jeff Horn, by the way. But yeah, since the loss, beat Jesse Vargas, all the way his. Tim Bradley, all the way his. Matisse knocked him out. Adrian Broner, easy win. Keith Thurman had that one kind of in the bag. And even before that, the Tim Bradley fight, a lot of people look back as one of the biggest robberies. The Juan Manuel Marquez fight was so back and forth, even before he got knocked down. Chris Algieri knocked him down 6 times. Brandon Rios, easy win for him. Tim Bradley, the second time around, easy win. So the idea that he was going to come back and win this fight, he just hasn't been that guy in his career. It hasn't been one where he's really had to dig down and have the big rally. He's mostly so ahead. I mean, he's an all-time great. The only one you could really comprehend is the Floyd fight, but it was such a blowout that really never had anything to it either. So I don't know, man. I think that for me, what he should do with the rest of his career, I think that he should probably hang it up. I say that as, again, probably, if not my favorite boxer, top 3 all time for me. I think it's probably like him, Roy Jones. Those are the 2 guys who are always have everything, like all of my support, always, no matter what, for me. And I don't want to see him fight. I don't know if I want to see him fight anymore. And I don't really know. I guess I mean it like this. I don't really know what makes sense for him anymore either. What is the fight that makes sense for him? McGregor doesn't make sense for him. Doesn't really make sense for him to fight Errol Spence now. Does he, do they pull the Terrence Crawford thing out of his hat? And that's maybe Bob Arum. I don't know what Manny's contract situation. That's always so weird. I don't know what his contract situation is. So could he go back to the other side of the street, or could that be a welcoming gift on the behalf of Al Heyman to Terrence Crawford at PBC? Yeah, maybe, but again, I still do believe that Crawford and Spence are a little bit of a cut above Yordenis Ugás. And so I would say I don't love his chances against it anymore. And it's tough that you're a prisoner of the moment like that. But yeah, he looked every bit of 42 tonight. And I just didn't see him. He mentioned the tight calves today. That's been a Manny Pacquiao thing for a while. So, maybe he just, I don't know, just wasn't tuned up as well today, because he definitely didn't have that movement. But how can he feel confident that he's going to have that come around the next time, now that he is the age that he is? I don't know. So I think it's time. It feels time for him to step away. I think he kind of was hinting at that. I think his wife, being ringside, seeing him take all those shots, and again, not like it wasn't the most devastating beating you've ever seen of your life. Don't get me wrong. Honestly, my final scorecard was 7-5. I know I was probably scoring with my heart, probably on a couple of those late, but I thought I was scoring more so conservatively early on. So I felt like I thought the scorecards, we're always ripping the judges. I thought as great as you get, 7-5, 8-4, 8-4. I thought that's as pretty good as you could get for judging. I think if you were really leaning Pacquiao, which I was, 7-5 is probably about as good as you could get for him. And 8-4 is probably more appropriate. And so that's a pretty sound beating. It's a pretty sound beating when you lose 8 rounds to 4 in a unanimous decision. Ugás, Miami's own piece, hometown, introduced out of Miami yesterday. So big one for the hometown. But listen, Manny Pacquiao has been my guy for a long time, so I am a little bit somber this morning as well. But I do want to give another shout out to Yordenis for his win. Awesome performance by him. It really was an awesome performance by him yesterday. I mean, he was so calm, so cool, and really was just hitting him, I thought, was some really vicious stuff. I know he's not like the biggest knockout artist in the world, but I thought he was stronger, very clearly stronger than Manny Pacquiao. Very unbothered by any of those flurries. Like, Manny had a couple of where he was really starting to pick up the pace, like round 8. It was getting a little bit better. I thought round 9 I gave to Manny. He hit him with some clean stuff, body shots. But even then, like, I think Ugás was almost like seeing, all right, let's see if he gets a little froggy. Let me see if I can catch him. Like, I didn't think that he was slipping away in the fight. And I give Manny credit. Like, listen, Manny kept trying to bring the fight to him. That was that definitely was the case. But he just he never hit him with something that really felt like a game changer. There was that one moment in the 10th round where it looked like he caught him, but I think it was almost like it was a very awkward fight too at times, with just the clashing, the low blows, lots of that. So for Ugás, I agree. Like, I think that, I agree with his point that he says he wants to unify now. Does that mean Errol Spence? This is going to be an interesting one. It was revealed this week from Mike Cobbinger that he has a detached retina. I think the original report was scratched. Now, listen, I'm no optometrist, so I don't know what detached sounds worse. So I don't know how long he's going to be out. I hope this isn't it doesn't sound like it's like a cracked orbital bone or something like that. But there were some rumors that were out there that he was, completely ducking the fight and the injury was made up. That makes no sense to me. All these people who are like, it's so funny. We have all these conspiracy theories that have come out over the last weeks of, like, Tyson Fury. Oh, he doesn't really have COVID. Teofimo Lopez, he doesn't really have COVID. These people want to get paid. Like, I don't understand. Their damage is done for them. They have their contract signed. The only thing they got to do is show up on fight night. I don't understand why these people think that the fighters don't want to get paid. And certainly for Errol Spence, like, what the hell do you think he wants to not fight Manny Pacquiao for? First of all, he was a very big favorite to win this fight. I think if he saw tonight, like, think about this, if it was the case that he watched what he watched tonight and saw Manny at the age that he is, how silly he would feel. But I think that is just a dumb theory. So unfortunately, they had to kind of clear up where he was at with his health. But yeah, I think that it would make all the sense in the world for those guys to unify, and it's definitely not the fight I'm sure that Spence is looking for, but I don't really know what else makes sense. Like, look, you're PBC, you have all the welterweights in the world under your roof. Why the hell not? Like, why the hell should he not get to fight? He was supposed to fight the guy that you were supposed to fight. He beat him very soundly. It makes all the sense in the world for them to get it on. Now, if Ugás is going to wait a little bit and we're not going to have Errol Spence, here's where the things are going to get interesting, because you have Terrence Crawford and Sean Porter. They're going to fight. It looks like that's going to purse bid, so who knows who ends up with that fight. Terrence Crawford feels like his days at Top Rank are done, so I would imagine the only sound thing for him to do would be to get a whole heap of money from Al Heyman to come over to PBC and start fighting everybody on this side. They did, now, thankfully, Fox, who I've been hard on today, thankfully, they decided to put Terrence Crawford up on the graphics. Very nice of them to finally take that leap and put Terrence Crawford actually on. Make sure Terrence Crawford actually exists and put him as one of the welterweight champions, because when in the past they've pulled some real bull bleep where they haven't even put him on there, and I just don't understand that. Like, you think boxing fans are stupid? Like, you can't show the respect a little bit? I never understand that. Like, I don't understand why, we just ignore other promotions like they shouldn't matter. You want to understand? Like, I gave UFC a lot of credit when they did this with Michael Chandler, where they mentioned him as, they introduced him as the former Bellator champion. Like, it meant something. I don't understand why that's something you would want to just completely ignore, but Fox has been doing a pretty piss poor job with broadcasting boxing since they've had it. That's just the facts. I mean, how many times did they mention tonight that Manny Pacquiao is back to the bamboo stick training? I mean, did they mention it 20 times that Manny Pacquiao is getting hit with a stick? We get it. You mentioned it. Thank you. You've covered this. It's been broadcast. As far as their undercard tonight, didn't watch much of the first one because the Dolphins game was still going on, so I was still very much football centric. The second fight on the card, the Mark Pacquiao, hit that fight against Julio Ceja. Holy crap, that was the best fight I've seen tonight. I mean, that was incredible. I mean, you had Magnifico goes out there, knocks down Ceja in the first round, hits him with a beautiful hook, puts him on his ass, then, immediately doesn't put him away in the first round, and seemingly Ceja comes back, starts beating the brakes off of him with the body work, puts him down in the fifth round. They're going back and forth. He's still hanging on, and Pacquiao puts him down with a hellacious right hand, and then follows one up to put him straight to the canvas. And it was one of those knockouts that's like they're a different level knockouts. There are knockouts that are just scary in boxing. I was like, oh, I was like, I was, it was one of those where you were fearful that Ceja was gonna be okay. So that was a great fight. Then they had Victor Ortiz, Robert Guerrero, which had like a good 4 rounds of life. Maybe I'm being even generous to that. And then it got kind of ugly. This was actually one of the parts that actually bothered me the most about the broadcast, because it was Brian Kenny and Joe Goosen. And they brought up Freddie Roach. Now, Freddie Roach was basically trained. It was pretty crazy, I will say. It was noticeable that Freddie Roach was basically I think he was the trainer for 3 out of the 4 fights on the main card going into the Pacquiao. And I actually don't even remember them going to Pacquiao, the corner of Pacquiao, very much, which was kind of odd. I don't know if maybe they didn't allow cameras. I don't remember them going to him very much, which was kind of odd. Now that I'm thinking back on the fight, maybe I missed it. Maybe because I was writing down my own scorecard, my own notes, but I don't remember them going to it very much. But I was writing stuff down as score the fight on my own. I was making show notes, so maybe I missed it. But the point is they start off this broadcast of the co-main event, and so Brian Kenny asks Goosen, and he's like, "Hey, Joe, you ever work? You think this is a big deal? Freddie Roach is working multiple fights tonight and has a lot of action. Shouldn't, for a big fight, shouldn't he probably be focused on the one fighter?" And Joe Goosen flat goes, "Nah, Brian, it's no big deal. I've done double duty, triple duty. It's nothing. You'll be fine. And Manny Pacquiao's been doing it a long while." I'm like, "Oh, cool. Good insight from Joe Goosen." And then I don't know if it's because I don't know if they got bored into hot takes or what the hell happened, but it's like round 9, maybe it was round 10. And no, you know what? I think it was actually at the end of the fight, because Freddie got the hell out of there. And they're like, "Oh, yeah, it bears asking, Joe, like, do you think that Freddie should be in the locker room with Manny Pacquiao?" And he goes, "Got to tell you, the nights that I had a big main event fight, it's all my focus wanted to be. I only wanted to be in that locker room." I'm like, wait, you just said 7 rounds ago that you didn't care, that you've done double and even triple duty, and that Manny Pacquiao doesn't need Freddie Roach in the locker room. What the hell happened? Like, he completely flipped on his take based on his own experience. He not only changed his take and changed his opinion on Freddie Roach, but Joe Goosen changed what his own preference was as a legendary and veteran trainer. He goes and says from one point, "Oh no, Brian, I love having triple duty. Doesn't matter. You don't need to be there." 2, gotta tell you, when I have a big fight on main event night, that's all I want to focus on. What? So I don't know. I was very down on them today. Clearly, I've mentioned it a lot. And then, as far as, Manny's concerned, just kind of some final thoughts to put a bow on it for him. Like, look, this guy really already has solidified his career, his greatness. And there was one good point that they did make where they said, like, how many boring Manny Pacquiao fights have you really watched in your life? Probably the Floyd Mayweather one, and that's maybe the list. I mean, he is always a crowd pleaser. He is always a guy that is going to try and get the knockout, who's just was always geared offensively. And in all honesty, like was fighting way above where he probably should have been fighting weight-wise. Like, probably the cap that he should have been fighting at was 140. And, to just see the size discrepancy even today at an age of 42 was pretty crazy. It was pretty crazy. But if this was the last that we see of him, just, one of those guys, like, it always felt like an event when he fought. It always felt like I think for him, the thing that I always appreciate with Manny is I just never felt like I was getting cheated on my money. Like, I always felt like, even tonight, like, I didn't get the result that I wanted when I pay my $75, but I felt like, he gave you the money's worth. I felt like I felt like for boxing, where it's always about the main event and it's always about the main event fighters, it's not really about the card like it is with the UFC, where, like, if you buy the UFC 266 coming up in a couple of weeks for $80, you're getting Robbie Lawler versus Nick Diaz and Valentina Shevchenko and the featherweight championship. You're getting a whole night's worth of entertainment. And with boxing, I think the reason it's tough right now to have pay-per-view stars because so much is put into that main event. And if you don't deliver for your fans, and also if you don't have an inherent reason to root against anybody, which is, I think, where Floyd harbored a lot of his business. If you don't have a pleasing style and you don't give the fans the money's worth, then what are we watching for? And he always gave us that. Look, the greatness has been talked about for 8 division champion. People squabble at the number. Whatever, dude. The greats that this guy was knocking out, the style that he was knocking out, the rivalries, the even before he was even in this weight class of, like, the junior welterweight division, where he was the Mexicutioner, was fighting Marco Antonio Barrera, Eric Morales, Juan Manuel Marquez, the rivalries left and right, unbelievable. And if it is the end for him, I'm always just going to be forever grateful that we got to watch Manny Pacquiao fight. And I really do feel like, my father and a lot of my older relatives, they get to talk about the legends that they got to watch fight. I'm always jealous talking about their times, talking about the Four Kings and Muhammad Ali and all these guys that they got to watch. I can genuinely say, like, one of the guys that I will get to tell my son that I watched, if he becomes a fight fan, is about Manny Pacquiao. And that guy was an absolute legend. And every single time I watched him fight, I felt like I was watching somebody special and somebody changing the game, and was really just a joy to watch in the sport. So if this is the end for Manny Pacquiao, thank you to him for that, because he really made it fun being a boxing fan.